How quickly are folks determining, do I trust this person? Do I not trust this person? And how accurate is that first impression?
So it's accurate from a safety standpoint. It's terrible from a personal and professional standpoint. What I mean by that is this came about in our early ancestors. So 200,000 years ago, you'd be turning a corner. You would see an individual that you didn't recognize, meaning they were not part of your tribe, and you had to make a snap decision on, are they gonna kill me? They're gonna hurt me. They're gonna take something from me. So I'd use my ears. I'd use the sound. I'd look at the breaking of the branch. I would look at their face. And very few people are going to punch you if they have a smile on their face, or stab you with a spear. So you would look and see, are they coding negative or neutral? So that's why it's so important when I teach people. You have to have that eyebrow flash. You have to have a little bit of that head turned to the side. You have to code positive when you first meet people. Now that's in a really, really quick situation. We use that. It's very effective if you're walking down the street late at night. It's very effective for police officers when they walk up to a car, if their hair on the back of their neck stands up. But they talk about that gut instinct. So they're putting a horn or a halo on the situation. The problem is our cognitive biases come in the more interactions you have with somebody. And as a result of that, sometimes that confirmation bias, if we've put a halo around somebody, we stay consistent to that and we only see things through that prism. And that's very, very problematic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Move the Chains podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Munsey, and today's guest is recently retired after 25 years with the United States Secret Service. Brad Beeler brings a wealth of experience from his distinguished career. His final position, he was an instructor at the National Center for Credibility Assessment. He trained thousands of federal law enforcement and intelligence agents in credibility assessment and elicitation techniques. Brad also served on the protection detail for former President George H.W. Bush and various foreign heads of state. He's a federal polygraph examiner for 17 years, secured numerous confessions in high-profile investigations, and conducted the most criminal polygraph examinations in the agency's history. This is going to be just a fascinating conversation. I've been looking forward to this, Brad, for I don't know how long, maybe 2 months since we first got connected. Welcome to the show. You've got a new book out called Tell Me Everything, A Secret Service Agent's Proven Strategies for Earning Trust, Revealing the Truth, and Communicating with Anyone. Can't wait to dig in. So thanks again for being with us.
I appreciate you having me on, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. In your bio there, it talks about teaching credibility assessment. What is credibility? And how are you teaching people to test for it?
Yeah, we're looking at the veracity of someone's statement. So basically the truth. We're looking at, can I trust you? And from that standpoint, we look at the words. So think of lyrics if you want to think of it as a music video. And that's where we're going to end up, is the music video. So we got the words that are written down on a piece of paper. They're important, but they're not as important as how we say the words, which is another thing we look at from credibility assessment standpoint. And then how you look when you're speaking the words. So it's those three dynamics. If you want to think of it as kind of think of a Pearl Jam video. Very few people know what Eddie Vedder is saying, right? Very few people. I don't know. In fact, so many people get it wrong, right? Yeah. But yet the way he uses his voice as an instrument and kind of does his thing brings it all together. My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor spoke Portuguese for the first 18 years of his life solely down in Brazil, but his favorite musical group was Red Hot Chili Peppers. Why is that? He doesn't know what they're saying. Okay. So it's all about putting all that together, because sometimes word choice is important as far as looking at the veracity of somebody's telling the truth. Sometimes a little bit of hesitation or a little vocal inflection is a problem as far as determining if someone's being truthful. And many times the body language not being congruent with those first two is the last piece. So putting that all together.
And in that first section of the book, you talk about one of your frameworks is horns and halos, and it's a reference to first impressions. How quickly are folks determining do I trust this person? Do I not trust this person? And how accurate is that first impression?
So it's accurate from a safety standpoint. It's terrible from a personal and professional standpoint. And what I mean by that is this came about in our early ancestors. So 200,000 years ago, you'd be turning a corner. You would see an individual that you didn't recognize, meaning they were not part of your tribe, and you had to make a snap decision on, are they gonna kill me? They're gonna hurt me. They're gonna take something from me. So I'd use my ears. I'd use the sound. I'd look at the breaking of the branch. I would look at their face. And very few people are going to punch you if they have a smile on their face, so, or stab you with a spear. So you would look and see, are they coding negative or neutral? So that's why it's so important when I teach people, you have to have that eyebrow flash. You have to have a little bit of that head turned to the side. You have to code positive when you first meet people. Now, that's in a really, really quick situation. We use that, it's very effective if you're walking down the street late at night. It's very effective for police officers when they walk up to a car, if their hair on the back of their neck stands up. They talk about that gut instinct. So they're putting a horn or a halo on the situation. The problem is our cognitive biases come in the more interactions you have with somebody. And as a result of that, sometimes that confirmation bias, if we've put a halo around somebody, we stay consistent to that, and we only see things through that prism. And that's very, very problematic, because people that are charming, okay, they call about, charisma, they become cult leaders. Okay. Charlie Manson was very charismatic to those people. Ted Bundy, he made a great first impression. He made an awful second impression, right? Is that we want to be very, very careful about that. And I'll tell you a quick story. My partner and I are doing a search warrant, and, we come into the kitchen and we see two dogs. We see a Chihuahua and we see a Pit Bull. Well, from a first impression standpoint, obviously, most people are going to be looking at the Pit Bull. They were both not happy to see me. So my front sight focuses on that Pit Bull, but the Chihuahua kind of snuck behind me, jumped up, and grabbed me by my testicles. My partner Ryan's laughing. Okay. I think the Pit Bull's probably laughing that his little buddy was taking care of business. But I had mistakenly put horns and halos on that situation. So we have to be, once again, very, very careful. Now, I say from a self-defense standpoint, I was accurate, meaning, yeah, that hurt. It hurt my pride. But the Chihuahua is not going to cause me to be speaking in falsetto for the rest of my life, which is what the Pit Bull would have been doing. Mm-hmm. So that's a metaphor. It's something that happened, but it's also a metaphor, in real life, as far as you have to be careful about, I want to have repeated interactions with somebody before I go into personal or professional relationship. But too often, we jump into things with dating apps, not realizing that people have dug deep into our social media breadcrumbs and potentially become a mythical Prince Charming to take advantage of us.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point before initiating, whether it's personal or professional relationships, to have multiple interactions. Are there specific things that people should be looking for? Let's say it's either one of those, like a potential partner for a relationship or a potential business partner. What are, I don't know, like maybe a checkpoint or a checklist that people should look for at like the second, third, fourth interaction?
Yeah, so I always say, because a lot of the people that I talk to are females. They're wondering, hey, how can I be safe? And one of the things I always say is obviously do a little self-assessment on what's out there. Google yourself. Go see what you're putting out there on social media. Could somebody weaponize this? Because we see that a lot of in our dating scams in the Secret Service. People from overseas, they would see what you were doing, and they'd create a dossier on how would I attack this person, almost like how our foreign intel people would. And they can easily take advantage of that. They know your likes, your dislikes, your pain points, what makes you swipe right. And they're going to create that mythical persona. The other thing I say is when you do go out on a first date, don't go to multiple places, because there is a little hack mentally. It goes back hundreds of thousands of years once ago. The more time and place that you're associated with someone, the more likely you are to trust them. And that could be false trust. So don't go to get drinks somewhere. Don't go to dinner somewhere. Don't go to appetizers somewhere, because that's 3 touch points in which you've subconsciously viewed yourself as being safe with this person. And that's giving them a level of trust that they haven't earned yet. So be careful about the number of times. And once again, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So I want 3, 4, 5 interactions before I'm writing those big checks.
That's really interesting about the multiple locations on that first date. Would you also suggest, like if it's just going to be one location, would you suggest making it maybe a place that you're somewhat familiar with, so you're not completely unaware, but also not so familiar that you have that sort of trust bias built in?
Yeah, so that's interesting you bring that up, because think of it this way. You're a Clemson fan, right?
I am.
So if we're up in, in upper South Carolina, and you see somebody with a Clemson hat, I mean, okay, maybe if it's game day, you'll give them a little head nod. If you go to California on game day and you've got a Clemson hat and you see another person with a Clemson hat, you'll probably strike up a conversation. If we're in Azerbaijan and you see somebody else with a Clemson hat, they're going to be your best friend, right?
Yeah.
You're in a foreign land and there's somebody that has a shared interest. So it's interesting you bring that point up, is the more distance we are or the less familiarity we have with a setting, the more likely we are to potentially be brought in by somebody else's charms. So yes,
Yeah.
I would agree. Like if we go back, and I'm dating myself, if Norm goes into Cheers, he's in a familiar territory, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if he goes to a different bar, not as much.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. One of the other really cool things on your CV is the award for crimes against children. I didn't know that the Secret Service was active in something like that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking about that. Since 1994, Congress mandated the Secret Service to do forensic support for the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children and crimes that are backed by them. So that led to us working a lot of violent crimes against children and also crimes involving sexual abusive material, so inappropriate images. And, this stems from, Adam Walsh's his disappearance in the early 80s out of Hollywood, Florida. And then obviously John Walsh with all the work he did with America's Most Wanted, the amazing work he's done bringing people to justice. And since then, I think we've done almost 9,000 polygraphs in cases revolving this. And it's resulted in thousands of people getting put in jail and justice being brought, for these kids. It's one of these things, Ryan, where a lot of the people that we've protected are rich. They have resources. They're going to have protection one way or the other, whether it's from Secret Service or private security. Kids cannot choose the situation that they're born into, and nobody's looking out for them. So for me, and I know for a lot of the people in our polygraph program, that was the highlight of their careers, being able to give some power back to these kids.
Interesting. So is that a separate, I don't want to say branch of the Secret Service, but I mean, you're not, like, whoever's on presidential detail is not doing double time or double duty with children's stuff.
Yeah, correct. So pretty much an agent's trajectory would be, you're going to start in a field office. You're going to do some protection as far as shift work when foreign dignitaries come in, when the president or vice president comes in, other foreign heads of state. You're going to do advance work as well, so you'll get pulled off for that. And then you're going to go to your permanent detail assignment. So it could be the president, vice president, or it could be a former president like what I did. And then your phase 3 assignment, or what's typically your final assignment, will be back in a field office, kind of wearing both those hats again. So we do have agents that work in some of this child exploitation work that aren't polygraph examiners, but we do have a lot of electronic crime special agents. They're agents, but in the part of their career, they're doing digital forensics and they're in that work. And then our polygraph examiners really, really work hard on these operations, these to catch predator operations. What we found is people that show up to these, so they meet an undercover thinking that it's a 12 or 13-year-old girl or boy. When we polygraph them, after having done as a program over 1,000 of these, we found about 60% of them admit to previous hands-on abuse of children. So the force multiplier there by bringing polygraph into it is extremely helpful. And, polygraph is controversial. It's one of those things where it needs to have guardrails on it. It shouldn't be used in court. But when used in kid cases, it's really hard to argue the results.
I want to come back to the polygraph stuff, but you mentioned some of the roles that you'll have during a career with the Secret Service. You had presidential detail with George H.W. Bush Sr. So, I mean, I would assume that that's kind of like the Super Bowl or the pinnacle of the things you can do, is being on presidential detail. How fun was that for you? And do you have any like crazy stories or big lessons from that time?
So for me, with HW, it was when he was out of office. So I would say it would be more like definitely not the Super Bowl as far as what the Secret Service does. It was more going back to 80s movies. It was less in the line of fire and more guarding Tess, taking care of a grandma and a grandpa and those types of things. Now, you still have to deal with, are they going to hit something in their boat? Are they going to hit something in a car? Is there normal crime? I mean, he did, take part in the first war, in Iraq. So there were some threats against him, especially right after that. But it was definitely not at the level of what we saw if you are on presidential protection, vice presidential protection. For me, I think my biggest details were right when I got out of the gate. W. Bush, when he was running as governor, being on his shift and going to the multiple cities a day, traveling all over the country, being there during the election controversy, because that's when I got to see the bright lights. And then when you're on a foreign dig, Iran, Iraq, Israel, China, some of these bigger details, when you do that, you are at a high level. But nothing like what the men and women that do presidential protection for a 4, 5, 6 year period, what they go through. And it's not just hard on them, it's hard on their spouses because of the amount of travel.
Sure. You've got this, I don't want to say like maybe an affinity, or you've got a strength in psychology and behavior communication. Is it fair to say that that's a unique skill set of yours, or is that something that almost everybody in the Secret Service possesses? Did you learn that through training that everybody got, or is that stuff that you kind of developed on your own?
I think it's a little bit of both, Ryan. I think it's like anything else in your field or otherwise. You're going to have certain attributes that you hope that the training can augment, but a lot of that's just time on target. A lot of that is, what's that old saying about if you do something for 10,000 hours, you're going to get good at it, right? If I want to view it as, I love jujitsu. I've been doing it for about 11 years, and I started as a white belt. And that's the hardest belt to get, because you have to be willing to walk into the gym and realize, hey, I'm about to get beat up, and you have to keep coming back. And being a brown belt right now, I realize I still got a long ways to go before I am going to get a black belt. And then after the black belt, there's a red belt. And it's consistent learning. So I think for me, I thought I had it all figured out, having done a lot of homicides and child sexual assaults in my first 2 duty assignments, St. Louis and Chicago. I didn't realize I didn't know anything until I went to the federal polygraph school, because CIA, SMEs, subject matter experts, NSA, FBI, DEA, all their representatives that were there, I would be able to, it's like a buffet. You could take this bit of information, and you just realize, wow, I know nothing. And I think as long as you go into life doing that, that's when I had my biggest jump in my own skill set, I think, was that shot to the head as far as, wow, I don't know. And it's kind of, I know we were talking offline about this, but I was up at that book event this weekend and ran into Jack Carr, sold millions of books, Terminal List, everything else that he's currently doing. Here's a guy that's a Navy SEAL, by his own accord, the things that he's done through the global war of terror and training. I mean, he was running basically BUDS out in Coronado, training, all the individuals that would go on from there. And yet, hey, I'm going to start writing books, and then I'm going to keep writing books. I'm going to do this. And it's a never stopping process for him. He's waking up at 5:30 every morning thinking, how can I get better? And I saw that and I'm like, man, I got to step it up. So I think you got to keep those people around with you. You get complacent. It's a problem.
Can you point to something early in your life, childhood, that maybe sparked that for you?
I'd say 2 things, Ryan. I'd say my best friend, being deaf for the last 35 years, taught me I have to be present in communication. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be drifting off, and you have to focus on all 3 phases of it. I had to look him in the eyes. He had to look me in the eyes. I had to augment it with either sign or body language, because if you think about it, when he watches a horror movie, it doesn't have a soundtrack. He doesn't know that the bad thing's about to happen, right? So you have to add to it. Yeah. And I think I've always learned that I have to add to every conversation, and I think and be present. I think it helps. And my drama teacher, junior, senior year of high school, Miss Bertrand, she taught me improv, and she taught me drama, and she taught me speech and how to be confident and have charisma and lock in all those different forms of communication. And, you get a fortune cookie and you got 5 minutes with your partner to sell that on a 20-minute skit to the crowd. You got to use your right brain. So I think communication, too many times, and I'm sure you've seen it, a good communication is like a good podcast, Ryan. People prep, like you probably, looked through the PDF that I provided you, the book. Mm-hmm. You probably maybe went on a podcast, you look on the LinkedIn, you get an idea of, okay, what's Brad's background? Then you meet me in the green room and make a good first impression. Then, after that, you find some commonalities. Hey, here's some potential talking points. Then you let me talk 80% of the time. And you refine certain points. If I go down a rabbit hole, you bring me back. But your whole point is to advocate for me and try to make me look good. And when that happens, now I start getting more comfortable, more confident. And the listeners on the other end, or the people that are watching, can see that. What's a bad podcast? It's all about you, right? I say something and you're like, me too. If I would have said, it just drives me crazy. The people that jump in, me too, in communication. Like if we're talking and you said, yeah, I like to do jujitsu. And I'm like, oh, me too. Instead of letting you bathe in your dopamine, your serotonin, bringing your cortisol level down, asking you informed questions. And then eventually you're like, do you train? Yeah, I do. I train. And now I get the best of both worlds. Too many people do the me too thinking it's a rapport and it's actually a wet blanket.
How do you use that in interrogations?
Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan. So you do something called FEEL, and it's family, education, employment, leisure. So family, a lot of the people I talk to don't have the white picket fence. You can't choose your parents, right? So it may be a sad story. And employment and education, sometimes dictated by the zip code you grew up in. Leisure, I don't care if you're in prison, or I don't care if you are down in off Folly Beach or living in Sullivan's Island down in Charleston, living the life. You choose 40 to 60 hours a week of something you enjoy to do. So I'm going to ask about it. And let's just run this out. So let's just run an example here. Hey, Ryan, what do you like to do in your free time?
I love to go hunting and fishing.
Okay. What are you hunting for?
Usually white-tailed deer around here, but I like to go out west once or twice in the fall and hunt elk or mule deer.
Okay. What state are you going to out there?
Montana, Colorado, Utah, anywhere I can get a tag. There's a whole
Are those draw states? You have to draw for those states? Yeah.
If I'm not interested in all of those. So there's a game that you've got to learn how to.
Yeah. It's not cheap, and you're probably going to have to get a guide and all that stuff, right?
Well, actually, we don't do guides. The people I hunt with, we like the DIY version, live out of a backpack in the backcountry and, come home grateful for running water.
And and you going on public land?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of rifle you got for those kind of hunts for mules?
Well, most of the time we go with the bow. We try to make it as hard as humanly possible. No guide.
And we're not talking the crossbow, right?
No, compound bow. But when I go with the rifle, I've got a 280.
Okay, perfect. You see, I could go down a rabbit hole with you like that forever, because since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, they say, I was on a deer stand in northern Missouri, right on the Iowa border, hunting some of the biggest bucks on this planet. Yep. And that's my yearly pilgrimage, right? My 308, my 4570, this, and then we could talk about the forever, right? But if the moment you said deer hunting, if I said me too, or what's the worst thing you could do? You whip out a picture of your big South Carolina 125-inch deer, right? That weighs about 125 pounds. And I say, oh, wow, look at this 160-inch monster I got, right? Come on, right? So that's the example of if we have shared interest. Let them run it out, get the dopamine, get the serotonin, get the oxytocin, bring the cortisol down. What am I not doing? I'm not interrogating them. I'm not talking about that bad thing. We're getting reciprocity and rapport. And it's respectful that I'm listening to them. Now, if I don't hunt, if I don't fish, if I don't work out, if I don't do any of those things, I would then ask you, well, what is it about hunting, Ryan, that you enjoy so much?
Right.
So real quick before you move on, I need an answer. What do you do in your free time? I mean, why do you do that? Why do you enjoy it?
I love the adventure, the challenge, being in nature, being in a place that makes me feel small. I'm not the apex predator. Makes me grateful for all the things that we have in our life when you come home.
So let's say I was a bird watcher and I share none of that. And I don't want to ever do any kind of hunting. But you know what? I'm going up to Montana to look at the wobbler, whatever. And I have those, I do it for the same reasons you do. Now we're connecting on the underside of the iceberg. So you got to ask those questions at a deep level, run them out, and you'd be surprised how much hidden commonality you have with people. Too often now, we're in these echo chambers. There's left, there's right, there's red, there's blue. We don't even hear the same, stream of information. So you got to ask those deeper questions.
And so I can see how in an interrogation setting, maybe that doesn't immediately lead to an admission or the information you're looking for, but it certainly better facilitates that as an outcome. And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're right in that I don't know how it's going to play out long term. In that they say they like to play Magic, the card game. Well, what's your favorite card? The Wizard. Or they play Dungeons and Dragons, the Wizard. I have no idea. So what do I ask? I said, well, what is it about the Wizard that you like? Well, I get to cast spells and I get to bring help to people and I get to fix wounds. And I don't know where we're going with this, but in the interrogation, I could potentially use that as a metaphor. I can go back to a case I worked, an applicant that he's talking about honeybees. What do you like doing in your free time? I like to watch Discovery Channel. What do you like to watch? Oh, those hidden camera shows. What kind of hidden camera shows? I don't know. There was one I was watching where it's like a bee and this, and I don't know how I'm going to use it. He's talking about a honeybee. Well, he failed my test about serious crime. He starts talking about gang activity. He admits to being a gangster disciple, and we're talking about how the Latin Kings are kind of driving around his house one day. Let's fast forward about an hour later, and we're talking about they're killer bees. They're coming to get your hive. They're coming to get your honey. You're just a honeybee. You're not going to hurt anybody unless they step on you. They stepped on you that day. How many times did you sting them? Oh, I stung him 3 times. I mean, he admitted to shooting this guy 3 times. He's an applicant, but I don't know what I'm building up. I'm digging the well before I'm thirsty. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what would be fascinating is to maybe translate this to an office setting where maybe people have to build those bridges with coworkers where they're initially kind of butting heads and not getting along. But, we know, and I think most people listening know, hey, if we have a working relationship, it's going to facilitate the results and the performance that we want, but maybe they struggle to, build those bridges.
Yeah, I think some of that is, as supervisors too. I see a lot of supervisors that they'll walk down the office at 8:30 to see who's there, and they'll walk through at 4:30 to see who's there, and that's it. They're just basically finding out who's truant, who's not in the office, who's late, whatever the case may be. And they say they've got an open door policy, but they don't. Or when you come in, what are they doing? They're on their phone, or they've got a desk in between them, so you're not really able to see. You need to have a separate area, and if you do have an open door policy, you need to have an open door philosophy. And you've got to have things in your office that people can kind of riff on when it comes to communication. Good communication is kind of like jazz. You don't know where it's going to start up. You don't know where it's going to end. But we need certain touch points other than, what are you doing this weekend? What did you do this weekend? How's the weather, right? So I think, in your office, you need to have some things, some little, this isn't a wide shot, but if it was a wide shot, you could pick up a lot of different things in my office that you might be able to talk about. I mean, I guarantee you'd see the deer heads, right? So it'd be something that we could talk about, or some pictures of my family, whatever the case may be. So, put some stuff in your office that people can naturally spark up conversation.
Got it. So let's come back to polygraph examiner. You talked about, I think the way you worded it was when you first went, you were learning from other people doing this at the other 3-letter organizations, and you realized how much you had to learn. And then by the end of your career, you're training them. I mean, that's a lot of progress. What about that did you really gravitate towards, and like how did you kind of make that much growth that quickly?
Yeah, so part of me wanting to go to training was I was just burnt out. I was working the kid cases. You have to rationalize, minimize, and project with some really, really bad people. You have to go to some dark places to sell jail, basically. And as a result of that, mentally, it's just the cognitive dissonance between the person you are and the person you're portraying yourself in the room is a little bit difficult. So it was a great transformation to me to kind of take a little bit of a step back and let some other people be in the trenches. And what I learned is I learned more from teaching. It accentuates a lot of those basic points. So I think of jiu-jitsu. I'm a brown belt now, but I learn a lot from rolling with people that are coming in for their first class, people that are, new to the beautiful sport, because I can do things with them that I normally couldn't do with a higher level person. But also it really accentuates a lot of the basics that when I teach it, it really cements some of the basics that I've maybe let go by the wayside. Sometimes hey, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, where sometimes the longer we do this, we get away from the basics. And what I would always do, Ryan, is I would keep a video or audio recording of some of my initial polygraphs I did when I first got out of school. And about once a year, I'd go back and I'd listen to those, and I'd realize how far I'm drifting away from the things that were making me good, because we get cocky. We think we got it all figured out just because we've been doing this a minute. So I'm a big fan in doing a couple things with my students. I transcribe what they did as far as their pretest or their interrogation, and I really, really dig into it. In fact, I'll run it through AI. People are so afraid of AI. AI will identify duplicative information. It will say, move this, move that. Trust me, it'll be more better understood. The next thing I'll do is I will turn the volume off, and I'll just have them watch their body language. And they'll realize, like, damn, I'm boring. Or I look like I'm on methamphetamines, all right? They look terrible. They're all over the place. Or what I'll do is I'll just, turn off the video and let them listen to himself. And they'll be like Charlie Brown's teacher. Blah, 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 blah. There's nothing in their voice that's interesting at all. So, and then I'll have them do like a vocal training app. It's 99-cent app, just to really get that vocal range, because that's the only weapon you have in your room. And, there's a big difference in people that do audiobooks that are good and ones that don't do them that aren't good. So your voice is very, very powerful. So that's what I do with everybody to try to, once again, bring on all three of those dynamics.
What is that vocal app that you're recommending to people?
I use something called Vocal Image. I've had good luck with it. That one's, I've gravitated to that one. That's a little bit more expensive. But it's if I hit it 3 times a week, I find I used to have a real nasally voice, Ryan, and it was annoying. Okay. It still might be annoying because you don't know what your own voice sounds like unless you listen to it, which people don't do. But I think this gives me a little bit of more vocal range and comfort. I don't think my voice runs out after about 2 or 3 hours anymore.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out, because that's actually something I run into, my voice running out. But it's funny you talk about listening to your early recordings. And that's something that as a speaker, you're always told, watch the video. The video doesn't lie. It's all the things you mentioned. It's the nonverbals. It's not just the words in your talk, but it's, your body language, your positioning, all those aspects of your voice, your tone, your inflection, your tempo, all of that. And so I think about when I hear early podcasts of mine, I'm doing the Me Too thing right now. But if I had to listen to a podcast that I recorded in 2015 or 16, it's cringe for me. Yeah. Like, it's so hard. You've got a pretty interesting story about your first solo polygraph, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, it was one of those things where I just got out of my internship and my partner, Brian, was off doing something else, but I'm a certified polygraph examiner. It's time to put your big boy pants on. And of course, it's a double homicide. Here's your first polygraph, right? And the guy failed, and I went to challenge his statement. And normally we would make a statement like, there's no doubt in my mind you failed this test. And I'd move immediately into my themes. And I was kind of like, I think I might, you did, and maybe. And I just looked scared, and my vocal inflection was super high. And a high-pitched voice carries further into the fields and forests for, once again, 200,000 years ago. In your brain, you receive that as danger or lack of confidence. And I know this person, that's the way they received it. That's the way law enforcement officers that are rookies sound like when they get on their first chase, their first big thing. Oh my God, we're going to this street. And you have to hack that, even though, they always say fake it to make it. One of the ways you can do that is really slow down your pacing when you're nervous, is really deepen your voice when you're nervous, because it's not going to be that deep due to the anxiety and the adrenaline. And it's not going to be as slow as you think it is because, once again, that adrenaline. So you might end up almost back to normal if you really slow yourself down. It makes me think about, I got dared to do an Ironman one time, a full Ironman. And my coach told me, he goes, hey, when you get off the bike after biking 112 miles, walk the first mile. He goes, because your legs are going to be moving so fast, you're going to run that first mile too fast, you're going to burn yourself out. He goes, if you walk, you'll end up walking fast, it'll be fine. Well, of course, I don't listen to the expert, run too fast that first mile, burn myself out, and have a horrible experience, right? So sometimes slow down to speed up.
That's really funny about the Iron Man. So when you're doing those polygraphs, what are you looking for when you're watching the, I guess, what would you call them,
The
suspect?
readings? Oh,
Well,
you talking
watching.
about during the polygraph, or are we talking like in the interview or interrogation as far as body language and such?
I think both, actually. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, so if I can kind of I'll just run you through like an interview, and if it was a polygraph, so be it. But the way I look at it is I want to do as much prep work on the front end, Ryan, as I can. Once again, there's so much out there with social media that you can pull from, and it's scary. Once again, I know we talked about this before, but you got to be careful what's out there. But I'm gonna leverage that. I'm gonna use that. If I'm doing a search warrant, I'm going to walk through their house. I'm going to see their DVD collection. I'm going to see their computer collection. I'm going to see their stuffed animals. I'm going to be looking at what book of the Bible that is dog-eared, and that's going to give me a good idea of some potential areas to explore. Then I'm going to make sure everybody's comfortable. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm never going to get to self-actualization. Agent Pirro, who interrogated Saddam Hussein over 6 months, he was able to become a friend with Saddam Hussein. I don't have 6 months. I can't have my mom's cookies sent over to Iraq to give to Saddam every day. So I've got a couple hours to work with. So I'm going to make sure they're safe. I'm going to make sure they understand why they're there. I'm going to get them fed. I'm going to get them watered. I'm going to treat them as if they were a guest coming over to my house. Because my goal, as my mentor would say, is to leave them better off for having met me and to try to get a Christmas card at the end of this interaction. And my friend Martin would get Christmas cards, the FBI agent would get Christmas cards sent to his field offices from serial killers, murderers, rapists, because he treats people with respect. Kind of goes back to the Hans Scharf, World War II Luftwaffe interrogator who interrogated thousands of U.S. pilots, but he did it with such respect that they sponsored his citizenship coming to the United States after the war. It's not what people think. Not being disrespectful, not pounding the table, not good cop, bad cop. It's great cop, better cop. I talk to people just like I'm talking to you now. So I meet those basic needs. Then I do the FEEL acronym that we talked about, find out those leisure activities. Then I explain the polygraph to them, but that's not for about 45 minutes. The reason being, Ryan, this is a significant life event. Let's say it's a job interview. It's a significant life event. So if I want to get a good read on a candidate, I'm not going to immediately bring them in and start asking questions. I'm going to, that's going to be a slow burn for 10, 15 minutes to let them have that baseline anxiety so I see the best version of themselves, because I want everybody to pass my polygraph. My goal is to get the truth. And if I create an environment like a Catholic confessional, which is private, which is non-judgmental, I don't ever furrow my brow. I don't say, why did you do that? I want to be a professional in that room and create an environment where the truth is okay to come out. And then if it doesn't come out and we take the polygraph, what the polygraph does is it looks at sweat gland activity, cardio rate, and these parameters are basically sent into we've got a DAS box, we call it, and it digitalizes the analog signal and projects it on my screen in real time. So without polygraph, we're about 54% effective. The largest studies have shown at determining truth and fiction. If we did true, truth, and a lie right now, I might be in the 60s trying to get you. And I've been doing this for a long time. Polygraph gets me in the upper 80s. It's not perfect. It shouldn't be used in court, once again, and it should be big guardrails on it. But we use it in very, very tight set of circumstances in the federal side of the house, and that's why we feel very comfortable with the results. Then, if they have problems on the test, we can talk about what we would do then.
You mentioned that you don't think that polygraph should be used in court. Why do you think it shouldn't be?
Well, sometimes it's not like Jerry Springer, and this is not a shot at anybody outside of the federal government. There are great polygraph examiners that rival anybody in the federal government in the state and local system. The problem is that there's so many examiners that sometimes they're put in situations that they probably should. The best polygraph you run is the one you don't run, in that sometimes they run exams that they probably shouldn't run. And that's the issue, that it's just, there's so many examiners, there's so many different ways to do things. And we have a very, very tight set of things of how we go about doing our business on the federal side of the house. So I would never want someone's physiological reaction to, at this state, with the science that we have right now, I would never want that to determine if they go to jail for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things you talk about in the book, behavioral indicator questions, are you weaving those in that interview prior to doing a polygraph?
Yeah, I will. And I appreciate you bringing that up because this can help somebody, with their kids even, is that this has been around since the 40s. John Reed came up with this. And there's some controversy with some of the things with the Reed technique, but these aspects are great questions that, if they're answered poorly, are very diagnostic. And once again, I take everything with a grain of salt because just like what is it? Who's the guy? Charlie Manson read How to Win Friends and Influence People. These people in jail read this stuff. So just because somebody gives me a great answer is not indicative of, hey, don't have any guilt. But if they answer poorly, it's a problem. And what I mean by that is if I ask what should happen to somebody that shoots somebody, if you were a judge and they say, oh, definitely treatment. What should happen to somebody who hurts a child? Oh, I think everybody deserves a second chance. That's a bad answer. The same as if I got two kids and if there's a vase broken when I walk in and I separate them and I say, Andrew, what should happen to somebody that broke that vase? Oh, they should get in trouble. And I go to Sydney. Hey, what should happen to somebody that breaks the vase? Well, if they say they're sorry, then maybe it's okay. I think Sydney broke the vase. Okay. They're giving the punishment for what they want to have happen to them in that type of setting. The next question I'll ask is 3 reasons. And the reason I ask this, it happens on car lots every day, Ryan. If you and your significant other go to the car lot to buy some type of vehicle, they're going to ask you that question very quickly. They're going to say, what are the 3 things you're looking for in a vehicle? And if you say dependability, gas mileage, safety, that's a different car that they're going to sell to you than a Corvette or a sports car. And those 3 things are the prism that they are going to do every part of that sale on. How safe it is, 5 stars, it gets 40 miles a gallon. Edmunds says this is the most dependable car, and they are just going to keep hitting on that because they know where the dartboard is. You already told them. That was free chicken for them is what we call it. And the same thing with a criminal. If I had a case here in South Carolina, sadly, outside of Columbia, where a 10-year-old girl was shot, and I asked the subject, can you come up with 3 reasons why somebody may shoot somebody? And they said, well, disrespect. I don't know. Maybe they were afraid. I don't know. Maybe they had just bought a brand new gun and maybe they were showing it off to their friends. And when they were showing it off to their friends, the other people saw it and things just kind of kicked off from there. Wow, that was really specific. Okay.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what do you think? Why do you think he admitted it was for that reason? Then we'll do potentially a bait question. All right. And what this bait question is we don't claim to have the evidence, but I would say, Ryan, let's say you said you were on this side of town, okay? And I ask you the question. I say, hey, Ryan, these license plate readers, it takes a while for us to get this information. But if we did look through it or we pulled the GPS on your phone, is there any reason whatsoever that we would see your car through the license plate reader or your phone through the GPS on that side of town? Well, if you weren't on that side of town, what would your answer? What should it be, Ryan?
Yeah, no.
No, and it should be a no with an exclamation point, not a no with a question mark at the end. No, right? Where you're searching for, do you believe me?
Right.
Yeah. And so a lot of times the answer will be, I hope not. Right? That's a bad answer. Or they'll say something like, oh, you know what? That reminds me. Yeah. I almost forgot this. I did go on that side of town for such and such. And then that gives us other ways to investigatively kind of break that story apart, the alibi apart. So those would be the 3 BAI questions that I use in a lot of our investigations.
I'm loving everything about this conversation, Brad, because, you mentioned Jack Carr earlier. I love his work. I love a lot of books in that realm. I love the Jack Reacher books, the Tom Clancy stuff, anything that's in that like thriller spy genre. And I think one of the things I love about the books versus the TV shows is when you read the books, the author gives you a lot of the stuff that is maybe nonverbal and, Reacher, he's running calculations in his head before he does something, or Jack Carr's characters are picking up, like you said, if you've got a search warrant, you're looking at, oh, hey, they've got a Bible and it's dog-eared at this particular book or whatever. Those are the things that I love about those books. And it's so cool to hear you talk about how you're doing those things in the real world. I'm curious, as an author yourself, who are some of your biggest influences as a writer?
Oh, I'd say Joe Navarro, FBI profiler, wrote a book called What Everybody Is Saying. Jack Schaefer, another FBI profiler. Robin Dreek, another FBI profiler. We have, Secret Service, FBI. We've got a nice friendly competition. But when there's talent to be had, you try to look at that talent. So I've been blessed to be able to kind of look at them and see that they can tell a really good story because they've done some amazing things. Robin did a great job as far as, he basically recruited spies. I mean, that's, if you can recruit spies, I might be able to use that. Joe was world class in his nonverbals and understanding nonverbals. So I can pull from that. So that's the key, is you need to be a white belt in these other disciplines, because look at UFC. UFC won. It was won by Hoist Gracie. He beat all these big guys, right? But within 2 or 3 years, if you don't change, BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was not where it needed to be because they weren't learning. They weren't taken from that buffet. The best UFC fighters are great kickboxers. They're great boxers. They might have a wrestling base. There is no limitation on what they do. Every day they wake up and say, how can I get better? That's how you need to be in life. You need to think of yourself as like a high-level UFC fighter.
I love that. And with that example, I think the first UFC, I don't know at what point the phrase or the term MMA, mixed martial arts, even came into being, but it certainly was only after a few of those iterations of UFC.
Yeah, and think about it. Up to that point, everybody thought they were the best, right? They were in their own echo chamber. Oh, I'm Aikido, I'm Taekwondo, I'm karate, I'm boxing, I'm wrestling. They all thought, I'm the best. And it wasn't until that where you could actually, hey, let's get in the ring and find out. That's when I think some people realize, man, I need to take some accountability here and I need to learn some other things. And we've done that with interviewing as well, is that some of the new science has come in and really shown us, hey, if you do this, you could get a false confession. If you do that, this may be a negative outcome. And so we've tried to come into the 21st century with that. So it's nice to have the PhDs on board to be able to help us out.
It sounds like at the highest level, the entire organization, whether it's FBI, Secret Service, that they're all sharing that affinity for feedback because it fuels growth and they're committed to growth. And you don't see that in a lot of organizations. That's got to be special to be a part of that.
Yeah, it does. And it does take you a little bit. I know it took me a while when I got down to the Federal Polygraph School, because once again, you have that normal ego. You want to come in and establish yourself. You want to, man, I already got this figured out. And it's not until you see a couple iterations of this and you see it, we're blessed down there as we can run mock scenarios. We have the basic trainees at Fort Jackson, and we do fake crimes, and then we polygraph them, whether they did the crime or not. So the stakes are so low that we can red team a lot of different things to see what works, and the stakes are so low that it's okay. But once again, that's how you get better when the real one does come around. In the field, you don't get that many opportunities because every case you do has ramifications. There's victims. I can't try this. So that's the nice part about that, is it's almost like a virtual reality. And I think AI is really going to change the game in this, because think of Abbottabad with the SEALs on their Osama bin Laden raid. They built a mock-up that was exactly what they were seeing on the satellite footage, and they ran that hundreds and hundreds of times under different sets of circumstances. AI is going to allow us to, let's say you wanted to have this podcast, Ryan, ahead of time. Let's say you had some actual famous guest that was coming in. Joe Rogan was coming in to talk to Ryan, okay? This was the first time, but whatever. Joe Rogan or Donald Trump was coming in. The AI now is coming to where you could take an avatar of that person. You could program it with every interview that person has done, so it learns what to say, when to say, its reactions, its facial reactions. And you could run through mock interviews based upon the input or stimulus that you provide, and that AI would provide you the response that you're most likely to receive. Not perfect, but just think about that, how quick we could get in our reactions. Think of football. Think of Clemson when they were, you got if you go back to the glory days a few years ago, think about that. If they're going to be going against Miami or Notre Dame, they put the scout team in, right? And they run all these different sets, so they see the tendencies. Mm-hmm. And I think people are afraid of AI. I think there's a lot of great applications for it.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about, I mean, on the football side of that, my wife's a huge Commanders fan. They drafted Jaden Daniels a couple of years ago. He was doing that at LSU. He was wearing
Yeah.
the VR
Yeah.
goggles and, getting the mental and visual reps, reading defenses and pre-snap reads and how do they adjust and
Yes.
things like that. I can't help but laugh when you're talking about mock interviews with Donald Trump. I kind of want to set those up and do it just to see how I can push his buttons.
Just for the heck of it. Yeah. Just to see the reaction.
Yeah, I mean, you never
I
know
think
where
a
that
lot
one's
of people would.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would enjoy that.
Yeah. So, Brad, one of the things I want to do is a little bit of a giveaway with, not a little bit, a giveaway with your book. So, as we come up on the close here, people listening, I'd love to, and if you have a better idea or better way to do this, Brad, let me know. But I'm thinking share on social that you're listening to this episode. Share the episode on social, tag Brad and myself, and we'll pick a couple of random winners and send you a copy of Brad's book, maybe autographed.
Yeah, absolutely. We can make that happen. Yeah, I mean, I'm just right down the road, so yeah, we can definitely make that happen for sure. And I'd love to hear the feedback from it because if they're listening to you, I think it's they're wanting to better themselves. I mean, podcasts are amazing. I mean, I've seen some of your guests, and you have a very broad, eclectic range of guests, right? So if they're on here listening, they probably have a mindset that they want to learn from, and hopefully they can get something out of the book. So absolutely.
And I think in listening to you talk earlier, one of the things that really stood out to me, I think it was when you were talking about the FEEL acronym and the conversations that you're having with people, especially in instances where it's something that you don't do or know about yourself, but you're still inquisitive. I think there's a deep rooted curiosity there. There's a desire to understand. I've always felt that is true of me. It sounds like it's very true of you. And I think that natural curiosity makes it easier to, ask those types of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That search for learning. I was probably a very annoying kid. I think my son probably shares some of that. Is that from the age of 4? Why? Right? Why is that? Like constantly asking that question, and it sticks with me now because when I'm talking to a bad guy, I want to know why. Because the why gets me the what, and the what gets them in jail. Okay? I mean, if you think of it this way, I try to be everybody's buddy, Ryan. And what I mean by buddy is blame other things for their misdeeds, understand but not agree with, demonstrate tactical empathy, diminish impact but not culpability, and focus on the why and not the what. And you're going to do it in your personal life if you're going through something and you have a breakup. If your listeners have a breakup, you're going to have a part of your wolf pack that's going to be there to blame the other person, to understand, try to understand what you're going through. Hopefully they don't say, I understand what you're going through. That's like what people do at a funeral. Like that's the worst thing you could possibly do. Oh, my dad died too. Shut up. Okay. Everybody's grief is their grief. And then, diminish the impact. Hey, there's other fish in the sea, time heals all wounds kind of thing. But the analogy I always like to give is how would you interrogate Harry S. Truman for 17 fire bombings and dropping atomic weapons on Japan, if we ever came to that? And what we'd do is we'd blame the Empire of Japan. We'd say, Harry, we were minding our own business. We were focused on the Western Hemisphere. We were engaging in Monroe Doctrine for the last 150, 200 years. And what happened? The Empire of Japan dropped bombs and throughout the Pacific theater and killed over 3,000 of our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. So I understand why you felt like you had to do this. And then I would diminish the impact by saying, Harry, like, look, we lost 1 million people by dropping those weapons. However, how many more would have been lost if you would have waited? If we would have had to invade mainland Japan? Then I would demonstrate tactical empathy by saying something along the lines of, it's kind of like an ER doc late at night, 2 a.m, a horrific car accident happens, and you have a 2-year-old girl in front of you with a mangled leg, and you have a tough decision to make. Am I going to take the leg or not? If I take the leg, kid's going to have a prosthesis his entire life, but she's going to live. If I don't, there's a good chance she may get infection and she may die. So you made a very tough choice, Harry. You took the leg. And then I'd focus on the why. I'd say no other time in history has someone had power like this, the power of the sun, where they could have dominated and taken over the whole world and not do it. And that's not what you did here. You rebuilt the world with the Marshall Plan because the buck stops here. You're a great man from Missouri who made a tough choice. That's how you'd interrogate Harry S. Truman. And if I'm going to interrogate Adolf Hitler, I need to treat him like he's Harry S. Truman. If I'm going to interrogate Osama bin Laden, I need to talk to him as if he's George Washington. They both fought with terroristic means. They were both 3% of their population. They were both super tall. They were both religious. They were both financially sound, and they both fought off two empires. Now, I'm not trying to equate the two, but one's on a dollar bill, one's a terrorist. I have to make the one that's a terrorist feel like he's the one on the $1 bill for his people, because the boogeyman doesn't think he's the boogeyman. Everybody's the hero of their own adventure.
And that is so true. I love that analogy and the comparison there. So are you, I guess, hearing you walk through that quickly, then are you doing that little exercise in your head before you interview or interrogate any individual? You're going to say, who is the comparison for them?
Yeah, like how can I visualize this person in a good way?
Yeah.
Like, how can I put a halo on this person? And that's hard to do, because at the end of the day, they truly, let's say this, in hundreds or thousands of bad people, there's only been a few that are truly wake up in the morning with evil and go to bed with evil thoughts. Most of these people, situational factors intervened, life circumstance intervened that caused them to do that bad thing. Most people. The ones that are, where it's really hard are the ones that are truly evil. The ones that did wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning or did create a scenario where I'm going to cause harm to these 30 infants, you know, and say these horrific things. And at the end, I just have to sit there, and because I learned the first time I furrowed my brow, they shut down. So that is the hard part. You're acting to some degree, but the closer it can be to reality and be genuine, it's not perceived as performative by then. People can see through fake a lot of times. So I want to have that little bit of visual, and I want to almost believe in them a little bit that something bad did happen to them. Now, with that, sometimes it can go down the deep end, and it's good to have a partner that can see you're holding on too tight, and that, hey, Brad, man, maybe we need to take a little bit of break here. You're getting too close to this. And I think if you talk to Dobbins, who, with the ATF that, got with the motorcycle bike gang, or Scott Payne, FBI agent, who got with, who infiltrated some hate groups. I think when you talk to some of those people, now granted, they're doing it 24/7, so I can't relate to that, but they said they even had a fondness or almost a Stockholm syndrome, trauma bonding, whatever you want to call it, with these people. And they needed to kind of be, hey, you need to take a step back. I think for me, it was more episodic, but some of the things still happen that way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It makes me want to, I kind of want to play that game of who would I compare, like who's the halo version of this Horn person? It sounds like a great exercise in practicing non-binary thinking.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? What were the perfect storm of events that led this person to do that bad thing?
Right.
What's their why? What's the context? And, real quick, I'll tell you a quick story. So I always like to bring context to anybody I'm talking to. And let's say I'm 30 minutes into an interview with somebody, and I'm chatting them up, and I want to get to that why. And a good buddy of mine, Dave, was a friend of Ron Scherer. He was the former Navy SEAL, became a Secret Service agent, unfortunately, got cancer and passed away a few years ago from the burn pits from cancer, throat cancer. But I'll tell the story. I'll be like, I'll just ask you the question. I'll say, hey, Ryan, what do you think should happen to somebody that shoots somebody in the face?
If it's not self-defense.
Yeah, just no context. What should happen to somebody that shoots somebody in the face?
They should probably be in jail.
Absolutely. And what should happen to somebody that just goes up to somebody and pushes them off a cliff?
Probably in jail.
Yeah, easy. And so we're repping this out as if almost you're the bad guy. Ryan is accused of X, Y, and Z. He failed my polygraph. We're chatting. And at this point, I'm going to say something along the lines of, I would agree with what you just said, Ryan. They shot somebody that pushed them off a cliff, but let me give you some context. My buddy Ron, he's 18 Delta medic, Green Beret. He's assigned with the 82nd Airborne, providing medical support. The Battle of Khost happens, 2006 kicks off, and we're given some intel that there's some high-value targets that they need to go snatch and grab. Some ANA troops, Afghan National Army troops, and 82nd members enter the base of this operation at the base of this hill, and immediately are brought under fire, massive enemy fire, multiple casualties taken. Ron sprints to a casualty collection point, rendering aid, putting on tourniquets, hanging fluids, doing everything he can to save these people's lives. At one point, he pops his head up, takes a round up the head, is concussed, comes to, and sees an enemy combatant coming down to basically wipe out the casualty collection point. So what does he do? He shoots the guy in the head. Now that I give you some more information, would you say that that context is important before you render a decision?
Very much so.
Absolutely. Now goes back to rendering aid. He's got to get this guy to a high level of care because the individual that's right in front of him has lost a lot of blood. We got that magic hour in trauma. And he realizes he can get this guy 10 feet over a ledge. They can get him to higher level care at a forward operating base. So he pushes him off a cliff. But by pushing him off a cliff, he gets in the magic hour. They save his life. And this guy gets back home to his family. So he pushes somebody off a cliff. Now, would you say that I gave you more context? Would you say that is helpful?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, 13 years later, 12 years later, whatever it is, he gets called into the Oval Office and gets awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor as a result of those actions for shooting somebody in the face, pushing somebody off a cliff. So, Ryan, what we've talked about, I already know the what, but you have the ability right now to be able to explain to the people outside this room, the people that are the decision makers, the why. And I think the why is the question mark that finishes this puzzle that changes everything. And I think that's what we need to do at this point. And so I try to get your why. If I can get your why, we got the what.
Right. That's cool. I love learning the psychology behind all this. I mean, that always fascinates me. I mean, everything I do is, why it's trying to understand the action, the why people do what they do. Right. And, for me, it's if I can understand that, I can help you, better align your actions with your values and your goals.
Absolutely. And the way I like to view this, Ryan, I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but we have to realize the emotional contagion that we're bringing into the room. Too often we're trying to understand their why, not understanding that it may be a product of what we're putting out into the world. Our frowns, the wrong questions, picking the wrong time, the wrong place, being in the wrong headspace is many times it's not them, it's you. So you got to come in there. I'm a big fan of play like a champion today when you're running out at Notre Dame or at Disney. They have a sign for all the cast members before they walk out into a public space that says, "You're now on stage." And that's the way you got to view this. When you cross the threshold to make that call or cross that threshold to go into that meeting, you have to sit there and say, "Play like a champion today," and you're now on stage. Your mind's got to be right for that interaction.
Yeah, spot on. Brad, this has been a blast. I can't thank you enough for joining us here on the podcast today. Where can listeners get the book, follow you, hear more of your work and what you talk about?
No, I appreciate it. Anywhere books are sold. Obviously, most people get their books on Amazon nowadays, but bradleybeeler.com. On the socials, I like to post a lot of stuff. So Brad Beeler 1865 on Instagram and LinkedIn.
All right. We'll put links to all that in the show notes. So for you guys listening, make it a lot easier for you to find Brad and follow along. Parting shot, Brad, your number one tip for listeners to be more consistent.
I'm just a big believer in master what matters most. And what I mean by that is in jiu-jitsu, we learn thousands of techniques, but there's 5. And that the 5 that you learn the first day in jiu-jitsu class, and then we move on to everything else. So master what matters most, and that's being present. That's looking people in the eyes. That's preparing for your interaction. That's having a dry, warm handshake, and that's listening more than you talk. You do those 4 things, you're going to be a lot more successful in anything you do.
5 things, right?
Yeah, 4 or 5. Let's go with 4.
All right. Awesome. Brad, thank you so much, man. This is awesome. For everybody listening, thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Those really do help. And of course, share this one with the people you know who will benefit from what we talked about here with Brad today. And as always, thanks for being here. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Move the Chains podcast.